That one sentence, it really just sets the stage perfectly for a story that's been unfolding for thousands of years. It's a story of empires rising and falling, of a people exiled and returned, and of a single piece of land right at the very heart of it all. So yeah, let's dive into that. How did this one tiny strip of land on the Mediterranean become the focus of three world religions and this just seemingly endless cycle of conflict and rebirth? To really understand what's happening now, we have to go way, way back to the beginning. Okay, so our story really gets started in a land known back then as Canaan. Geographically, it was a total crossroads for ancient civilizations, kind of like a bridge connecting Mesopotamia, Egypt, and Europe. But what made it truly special, what changed everything, was what happened there next. It became the birthplace of the world's first major monotheistic religion. Now, these foundational stories, they are absolutely crucial because they shape everything that follows. According to tradition, it all kicks off with Abraham, who gets a promise from God that this land, Canaan, will one day belong to his descendants. Fast forward a few generations, and you have Moses leading the Israelites out of slavery in Egypt and receiving the Ten Commandments. And finally, Joshua leads them into that promised land, starting the long, long process of actually settling there. So, this initial settlement, it leads to the rise of a pretty powerful kingdom. But, and this is a big but, it also starts this painful cycle that's going to repeat itself over and over throughout history. A time of independence and rule, followed by a brutal conquest, and then exile from the land. For a little while, though, things were good. I mean, really good. Under King David, all 12 tribes are united. He makes Jerusalem the political capital, and then his son, Solomon, turns it into the spiritual heart of the nation by building the first temple. This was a place of immense religious importance, and it's remembered as the kingdom's golden age. But that unity, it just doesn't last. After Solomon dies, the kingdom splits right in two. You have the northern kingdom of Israel with 10 of the tribes, which is eventually conquered by the massive Assyrian Empire. Its people are scattered and become known as the Lost Tribes. The southern kingdom of Judah, though, it holds on for about another 150 years, and it's from Judah that we get the term Jew, an identity that was about to be tested like never before.
Okay, so 586 BCE. This moment is a massive turning point. The Babylonian Empire rolls in, conquers Judah, burns Jerusalem to the ground, and destroys Solomon's temple. The Jewish people are then forced into exile, all the way in Babylon. I mean, this event is a profound national trauma, but it also sparks something incredibly powerful and lasting, the dream of one day returning to Zion, of going back to their homeland.
So, for almost 2,000 years, Jewish communities are scattered across the globe in what's known as the diaspora. And through it all, they hold on to their identity, their faith, always with that memory of return. Then, in the 19th century, that ancient religious stream starts to morph into a modern political movement. So what changed? Well, it was kind of a perfect storm of three things. First, as these nationalist movements were sweeping across Europe, Jews were often branded as outsiders, which led to these horrific massacres called pogroms, especially in Eastern Europe. Second, you have the Dreyfus Affair in France. A Jewish army captain is framed for treason. This was a huge shock, and it showed that even in supposedly modern Western Europe, assimilation might be impossible. And all of this leads a man named Theodor Herzl to a stark conclusion. The Jewish people needed their own state to be safe. So he organizes the First Zionist Congress, and boom, modern political Zionism is born. And then the 20th century hits. You've got 2 world wars, the collapse of huge empires, and a global catastrophe. All of these massive historical forces converge on this one small piece of land, and they set the stage for the creation of the modern state of Israel. The momentum just builds incredibly fast. During World War I, Britain issues the Balfour Declaration, this short but game-changing document that supports a Jewish national home in Palestine. Then, the absolute horror of the Holocaust creates this undeniable, desperate urgency for a safe haven. After the war, a weakened Britain basically throws its hands up and gives the problem to the new United Nations, which votes to partition the land. The Jewish leadership says yes to the plan. The Arab leadership says no. And on May 14, 1948, David Ben-Gurion stands up and declares Israel's independence. The ink is barely dry on that declaration before neighboring Arab states invade, and this moment right here illustrates the two completely irreconcilable stories of what happened.
For Israelis, it's their war of independence, a desperate, life-or-death fight for their very existence. For Palestinians, it's the Nakba, which means the catastrophe, an event that saw over 700,000 people become refugees, fleeing or being forced from their homes in the chaos of the war.
So Israel's victory in 1948 secured its existence, for sure. But it didn't secure peace, not even close. The decades that followed were just a relentless series of wars that really forged the nation's identity around military strength and, above all, survival. And man, this timeline, it's just a whirlwind of conflict and these brief, fragile moments of diplomacy. You have major wars in 56, 67, and 73 that completely redrew the map of the Middle East. The Six-Day War in 1967 was especially huge, with Israel capturing the West Bank and Gaza Strip. Now, peace with Egypt at Camp David was a massive breakthrough, but it was followed by two major Palestinian uprisings, the Intifadas and the hopeful but ultimately failed Oslo Accords, which was supposed to be a path to peace with the Palestine Liberation Organization, the PLO.
Which brings us, more or less, to today, an era where Israel exists as this nation of profound contradictions, a place of incredible success and innovation, yet totally defined by a seemingly permanent state of conflict.
I mean, think about it. Surrounded by hostile neighbors, with almost no natural resources, you really have to innovate just to survive. And that necessity became the fuel for a really remarkable transformation. The country earned the nickname Startup Nation, becoming a world leader in tech, medicine, and security.
And right here, this is the central paradox. On one hand, you have this dynamic, high-tech society, the startup nation. But on the other hand, you have a nation on edge, constantly dealing with the unresolved conflict with the Palestinians, a serious regional rivalry with Iran, and deep, deep divisions within its own society over politics and religion.
And the core issues that are still driving all this conflict today, man, they're just incredibly complex and tangled. You got the status of Jerusalem, a city holy to three different faiths. You have the ongoing expansion of Israeli settlements in the West Bank, the blockade of the Gaza Strip, the deeply emotional question of a right of return for Palestinian refugees. And all of this is playing out against the backdrop of a wider regional Cold War. So, where does that leave us? We're left with a story that's somehow both ancient and incredibly modern at the same time. It's a story of faith, of survival, of endless struggle. It's a history of unbelievable resilience and rebirth, for sure, but it's also a history defined by perpetual conflict. And the one question that nobody seems to be able to answer is, what comes next?